Hi, I'm Eli. Today's story is about a man who spent nearly 3 decades building someone else's dream, only to be discarded 4 days before his pension kicked in. But loyalty has memory, and when injustice is buried under silence, sometimes it only takes one call to bring the whole building down. My name is Robert Hale. I'm 64 years old, and I spent 29 years and 11 months working at Fairgrove Dynamics, a mid-sized engineering firm in Pittsburgh. I was there before they had branded mugs in HR departments, when the printer still jammed every 10 pages and the server room was cooled with box fans. I ran facilities, fixed heating in the winter, plumbing in the summer, trained every new guy who walked through those doors. I came in early, stayed late, skipped sick days, canceled holidays, all to keep their operations humming. I was 4 days from vesting my full retirement when they called me into a glass-walled conference room. Brent Morrison, the new COO, didn't even look up when he said it. We're restructuring. You understand how business works. The paperwork was ready. The termination date, 4 days before my benefits locked in. I signed. What else could I do? Yell? Beg? I'd seen men my age get dragged out by security when they fought back. I handed over my badge, worn smooth from nearly 3 decades of swipes, and walked out. Nobody made eye contact as I passed the cubicles. The lunch table where I sat every day was already filled with someone new. That's how quickly you disappear. That night, I sat in my kitchen staring at my termination letter. According to them, I'd worked 29 years and 10 months, but I kept everything: pay stubs, memos, emails, and I knew they were lying. My start date? December 11th, 1994. Termination date? November 7th, 2024. That's 29 years and 11 months, just 4 days short of full benefits. I opened the old employee handbook. It clearly said 30 years of service or age 65 equals full pension. I was 64. Then I remembered a company-wide memo Brent had sent just a month ago. All retirement calculations will be honored based on existing agreements. I had a copy. I had proof. And suddenly, I didn't feel powerless anymore. There was one person I trusted, Joanne Miles, the former HR director. She'd retired last year, but she was known for playing things strictly by the book. I called her. "Robert Hale," she said before I could even say hello. I heard what they did, and I'm not surprised. She told me exactly what to do. Bring me your documents. Every pay stub, every memo, every policy update. We're not just talking about a mistake, Robert. This could be fraud. Joanne had seen this before. Firms quietly trimming the books by eliminating senior staff right before benefits vest. "This isn't just about you," she said. "This is about every other person they're going to do this to next." And just like that, I realized I wasn't angry. I was ready. The next morning, I pulled out a plastic bin I hadn't opened in years. Inside were decades of documents, old HR policies, tax records, employee newsletters. I categorized everything. Made a spreadsheet with start dates, retirement clauses, updates. I even found Brent's original email, time-stamped and signed. Joanne was stunned when she saw it all. "Robert, this isn't just solid, it's ironclad." She connected me with an attorney who specialized in employment rights. The guy looked like a movie lawyer, wire-rimmed glasses, cold logic, steel voice. He said I had a case, a strong one, but he also said something else. "They'll settle." Quietly. "They don't want this in court. You'll get your pension, maybe more, but the way you handle the next few weeks will define your legacy." Legacy. That word hit me, because for nearly 30 years, I was invisible. Useful, but unseen. The guy who fixed pipes, reset servers, changed the lights. Now, I had a voice, and I wasn't going to whisper. My attorney drafted a formal complaint, detailed, meticulous, citing specific policy violations in the internal memo Brent tried to bury. It was sent directly to Fairgrove's legal team and the board. 5 days later, HR called. This time, it wasn't an intern, it was the chief legal officer. "Robert, let's not escalate. We're prepared to reinstate your full retirement, effective immediately, no need for litigation." I let the silence drag. Then I said, "I want it in writing. I want retroactive credit for my last 4 days, and I want a public acknowledgement." The line went quiet, but I didn't back down. They agreed, and just like that, the company that tossed me out had to shake my hand on the way back in, because they fired the wrong man, and I held the key to their survival. Despite getting what I asked for, I wasn't done. Word spread, first within the facility staff, then admin, and soon engineers from other branches reached out. Turns out I wasn't the only one. 2 other longtime employees had been quietly let go in similar fashion. One didn't fight back. The other passed away 2 months after his termination. The documents I had, they applied to more than just me. My attorney suggested a class action possibility, but I didn't want scorched earth. I wanted a culture shift. That week I started drafting a letter, not to sue, but to expose. I wrote directly to the board, the investors, and the ethics committee of our parent corporation. I outlined what happened, not just to me, but to everyone. I titled the letter, "The Price of Loyalty in a Disposable Workplace." I never meant to become a symbol, but something strange happened after that memo was posted. People I'd barely known started stopping me in the halls, in the parking lot, even across the street at the diner. They didn't just want to congratulate me, they wanted to know how. "How'd you fight back, Mr. Hale? What did you say to make them fold? Did you get everything? Your full pension?" Yes, and no, I got justice for myself. But the system that allowed it, still there, still dangerous. Fairgrove started damage control. Fast. They released a company-wide email highlighting employee loyalty programs and transparency reforms. They even scheduled optional open office Q&A sessions with HR. Optional. That word said it all. No one trusted them, but they trusted me. Joanne and I expanded our efforts. We created a guide, How to Audit Your Own HR File. Simple, clear steps. No lawyer needed. We printed 30 copies. By Friday, they were gone. I started getting emails from former employees, too. Some had been laid off just before key benefit dates. Some never received their final payouts. Some had no idea what they were owed. I helped them all. Not because I wanted revenge, but because the system was built to erase people like us. Quiet, reliable, invisible until we cost too much. And for the first time, I realized maybe they fired me, because they knew I wouldn't stay quiet once I saw behind the curtain. Fairgrove tried to pull me back in again. Brent himself called. "Robert, this can't continue. You're damaging the brand." I laughed. "You fired me 4 days before retirement, Brent. I am your brand." He hung up, but the damage was done, not by me, by their own arrogance. And now, the quiet man with the badge had become the loudest voice in the company. I wasn't prepared for what came next. An old colleague from another firm, someone I hadn't spoken to in over a decade, forwarded me a screenshot from LinkedIn, a post by a regional HR consultant with over 10,000 followers. A retired facilities worker exposed the most common benefit tactic in corporate restructuring, and won. His name is Robert Hale, and he just taught us all a lesson. That post exploded. Suddenly journalists reached out, podcasters, labor unions, even a local university professor who wanted me to guest lecture a business ethics class. I wasn't trying to be famous. I was just trying to make sure no one else got blindsided like I did. But the story had struck a nerve, not just with older workers. Young professionals started messaging me too. "My dad went through something similar. I've never seen anyone fight back and win. Can you share your guide with my team?" I shared everything, free, because I didn't need a brand. I had a mission now. Back at Fairgrove, they tried to paint me as disruptive. Internal memos said things like, "We respect Mr. Hale's right to speak, but his actions do not reflect our company's values." Funny, because just months ago they said I was their values. A photo of me used to hang in the break room. Employee of the Year 2016. They quietly took it down after I filed my claim, so I printed it again, framed it, hung it in my garage. Because now I didn't need their walls to display my worth. A young engineer named Marcus pulled me aside one day after work. "You're changing things here, Mr. Hale. People walk taller now. HR has even started updating our records without being asked." I nodded. "Good, but don't let it stop with me. Make sure the next guy doesn't have to win a war to get what he earned." And that's when I knew. This wasn't about a pension anymore. This was about legacy. And my legacy was no longer hidden in utility closets or maintenance logs. It was moving, loud, powerful, undeniable. By the time January rolled around, Fairgrove's board of directors had received 6 anonymous complaints. All of them described similar patterns. Employees terminated within weeks of qualifying for benefits, missing retirement documentation, Verbal promises never honored a quiet but calculated trimming of high-cost staff, and they all ended with the same name, Robert Hale, not as the accuser, as the reason people found the courage to speak up. One board member, a woman named Valerie Trant, requested a private meeting with me. We sat in a quiet cafe, neutral ground, no suits, no lawyers. She spoke first. I looked through the pension records, Mr. Hale. Your case wasn't an exception, it was a template. I nodded. And how many more? She didn't answer. She didn't need to. Instead, she slid an envelope across the table. Inside, a confidential internal audit summary. It wasn't just Fairgrove. It was a network of firms under their parent group, tight-knit subsidiaries using identical HR practices to suppress costs. They called it the optimization strategy. Translation, terminate loyalty, maximize savings. Valerie looked me in the eye. I want to help fix this, but I need your voice. I need you to make it public. I took a deep breath, because this wasn't just about my story anymore. It was about every janitor, technician, nurse, teacher, and quiet employee across the country who gave decades and got nothing. It was about a generation raised on the promise of loyalty equals security, and it was time to tear that lie down. That night, I sat in my living room, lights low, and recorded a video. Not a speech, not a rant, just my story. Raw, real, calm. I ended with this. They fired me like I was nobody, but I held the key to their survival, and now I'm not unlocking the door. I'm kicking it open so no one else gets locked out. I posted it, went to bed. By morning, it had 1.2 million views. The video didn't just go viral, it went global. Comments flooded in from Brazil, India, Germany, Canada. Retirees, nurses, warehouse workers, military vets, even former HR managers. Same thing happened to me in '08. My dad lost his pension after 32 years. You're saying everything we've been afraid to admit out loud. I didn't feel famous. I felt heavy, with the weight of thousands of people who had no voice, who were told they were replaceable, who were told their loyalty was a liability. Major media outlets reached out. I turned most of them down. I didn't want a spotlight. I wanted change. But I agreed to one, a public radio interview with a host known for asking tough questions. He opened with, Mr. Hale, do you think you got lucky, or did the system actually fail you? I answered, it's not luck if you spend 30 years building the foundation, get pushed off the roof, and still have the blueprint in your hands. The host was quiet for a moment. Then he said, that's going in our highlight reel. Meanwhile, Fairgrove began collapsing from the inside. Brent Morrison resigned for personal reasons. 2 HR managers were let go. The board issued a formal apology and launched a full internal review. But for me, that wasn't enough. I launched a nonprofit, Rooted Rights, a legal and educational hub for aging workers. Joanne joined as a founding member. So did Valerie from the board. We didn't go after companies, we protected people. Trained them to understand their contracts, taught them to document everything, helped them file properly, safely, powerfully. One afternoon, I received a handwritten letter from a woman in Arizona, 63 years old, recently let go after 28 years. Inside the envelope was a note and a small card. The note read, because of you, I fought back, and I won. Thank you for showing me I wasn't weak for staying so long. I was strong for surviving it. The card was a vintage photo of a tree growing through concrete, and on the back, they tried to bury us, but we were seeds. I keep that card on my fridge, because some stories aren't about rising again. They're about rooting so deep, the next storm doesn't stand a chance. A few months after the radio interview, I received an unexpected call. It wasn't a podcast host or a journalist this time. It was Darlene Chen, the newly appointed CEO of Fairgrove Dynamics. She'd been brought in after Brent's resignation with a mandate to clean up the mess, ethically and publicly. Mr. Hale, she said on the call, we'd like to invite you to speak at our annual employee summit. I nearly laughed out loud. Is this your PR team's idea of penance? I asked. No, she said, it's mine. To her credit, Darlene didn't try to butter me up. She admitted the company had failed me, and many others, and she wanted to start fixing it by letting me tell the story. Not the polished, pre-approved version, the real one. I agreed, but with conditions. I want every department head present, No cell phones allowed, no pre-screening, and I speak last. She agreed. The room was full that day. Hundreds of chairs, every executive, every HR lead, dozens of younger employees who'd heard the whispers and wanted to see the man behind the storm. I stood there, no slides, no podium, just me and a microphone. They fired me 4 days before my pension. They thought I'd disappear, but the only thing that disappeared was their reputation. A hush fell. You all have files, numbers, metrics, but people have names, histories, families, and when you trade people for profits, you don't just lose trust, you lose your future. And then I walked off stage, to silence, and then to applause. In the weeks that followed, something incredible happened. Other companies started calling, not to silence me, to learn. They wanted to replicate the guides I had built, to invite me to consult on ethical offboarding, to train managers on how to identify and preserve legacy knowledge. I wasn't a facility manager anymore. I was the guy with the blueprint, a human blueprint, for decency, for protection, for longevity that didn't exploit. I created a module, Exit with Honor. It became standard in 3 Fortune 500 companies, and I didn't charge a cent. Because I wasn't selling redemption, I was offering repair. But there were still emails I couldn't forget. The ones from people who didn't win. The ones who lost everything, homes, families, health, because a system decided their time was up. For them, I knew one thing. I couldn't fix the past, but I could block the next blow for someone else. One rainy evening, I visited my old Fairgrove building, the one I helped wire, repair, paint, and preserve for 3 decades. It looked the same, gray, square, functional, but something had changed. A new plaque was mounted near the front entrance, in honor of Robert Hale, for reminding us that loyalty is not a weakness and silence is never the end. I stood there for a while, didn't cry, didn't smile, just breathed, because that plaque, it wasn't about me. It was about every unseen worker who gave their life to a company and asked for nothing more than what they earned. And for once, someone had written that story in stone. A national magazine ran a cover story, The Man Who Quietly Broke Corporate Silence. They interviewed dozens of people I'd helped, executives who admitted they changed policies after watching my video, a union that cited my case in a class action lawsuit, a lawmaker proposing a bill to protect end-of-career employees. I never wanted to be a symbol, but the system made me one. The magazine asked me to pose for a photo. I declined. Instead, I sent them a photo of the plaque at Fairgrove. That was my face now. That was my voice. And I didn't need to shout anymore. I was fixing a loose hinge on my backyard gate when my grandson Theo came over. He's 6, curious, always watching. "Grandpa, what do you do now?" he asked. I paused. I used to say, "I fix buildings." Now? "I fix what they break, kiddo." He nodded, not quite understanding, but smiling anyway. That night, I looked through the emails one more time. Messages of thanks, stories of pain, questions, hopes. Then I opened a blank document and began to write the next guide. How to protect your pension, even when they won't. Because the fight never ends. And sometimes the final act of loyalty is making sure no one else has to fight at all. If you've come this far, you know this wasn't just a story about a man and a pension. This was a story about dignity, about how years of quiet sacrifice can be erased with one cold decision, and how the ones we overlook, the fixers, the helpers, the invisible hands, sometimes hold the foundations up better than any CEO. Robert Hale didn't ask for war, he asked for fairness. But when the silence got too loud, he became a voice the system couldn't ignore. And maybe that's the lesson. Loyalty isn't weakness. Patience isn't passivity. And quiet people, they're just the ones planning something louder than revenge, redemption. So if you've ever been told you're replaceable, remember this. Roots don't move, they grow, and eventually they crack the concrete.